Good evening everyone, welcome to BAJIRAO IAS Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. Today is 15th August 2025 and today we have some very important and interesting topics from the Hindu newspaper. So let's understand these topics one by one in a very detailed manner, so that this understanding will be helpful for your upcoming exams. So the first topic with which we're going to start this session is about the special intensive revision of the electoral roll in the state of Bihar. Now we have been discussing this special intensive revision of electoral rolls a number of times, right? So in the past also we have discussed. So however, what happened was recently the Supreme Court asked the Election Commission of India to publish the list of 65 lakh deleted voter names with reasons. So, the political parties and other legal experts have questioned the Election Commission of India's intention not to publish the deleted voter names. However, the Supreme Court has asked the deleted voter names along with the reasons for the deletion from the electoral roll. So in this context, let's discuss this. And in fact, this has been given in Indian Express newspaper, and this could be important for Gender Studies paper 2. So let's understand this. Now, what is the context? The context is that the Supreme Court recently asked the Election Commission of India in its interim order that the Election Commission of India should make available an online searchable list of approximately 65 lakh deleted voter names. So understand that in this special intensive revision of electoral rolls in the state of Bihar, around 65 lakh voters' names have been deleted from the electoral roll, right? So however, the Supreme Court has asked the Election Commission of India to publish the deleted 65 lakh voter names from the electoral roll along with the reasons as well. So what are the key reasons for their deletion? Why Election Commission has deleted the names from the electoral roll? So this is what the Supreme Court has asked, and the reasons could be either death, migration, or even the duplication as well. So when I say duplication, in the electoral roll there might be a single person appearing in two to three times, so that would be called as duplication, right? The Election Commission of India may delete certain names from the electoral rolls because of migration, duplication, or death. So you have to show those reasons for the deletion of their names from the electoral roll, and this is what the Supreme Court has asked to the Election Commission of India. So I hope it is clear. Now next, understand that this particular interim order from the Supreme Court, so it pushes the Election Commission of India for a greater transparency in the ongoing special intensive revision, right? So there should be a greater transparency on the part of the Election Commission of India. Now when I say greater transparency, it is true that the Election Commission of India has deleted certain names from the electoral roll, but Election Commission of India denies to public those names with the reasons. So it questions the it actually result in questioning the transparency and accountability of the Election Commission of India to the public. So therefore this might be considered as a push for a greater transparency in the ongoing election in ongoing special intensive revision exercise conducted by the Election Commission of India. However, so this could partially address the contentious issue of including Aadhaar as a valid proof of identity or residence in the process. Now let's understand what is a special intensive revision in Bihar, and then we'll understand the other key challenges which are involved here. Now let's understand what exactly is a special intensive revision. Now the Election Commission of India recently initiated this special intensive revision in the state of Bihar, right? So this special intensive revision is updation of the electoral roll, and also understand that coming November, Bihar is going for the state legislative assembly elections. Now at this point of time, the Election Commission of India has been conducting the special intensive revision of the electoral roll. So I hope this point is clear for you. Now what is the purpose of conducting this special intensive revision? Now the purpose is to ensure an accurate and inclusive voters. Now there are number of voters who might be who may be died or migrated, or even so number of reasons, even duplication also, or ghost voters also, right? So if we have an electoral roll, it is very important that such an electoral roll should be inclusive and accurate also. And the Election Commission has been giving this reason for conducting the special intensive revision. And it is also very important to enroll all eligible citizens and removing ineligible entries such as duplicates, deceased persons or non-citizens from the electoral roll. Now, what is the timeline of conducting this special intensive revision? And it was started on June 25th, 2025. And the final electoral roll scheduled for publication on September 30, 2025. So this was the timeline of conducting special intensive revision in Bihar. Now, what is the historical context in the past when the Election Commission of India conducted such a special intensive revision exercise? And in fact, the summary revisions are conducted every year almost. However, intensive revisions, that conducted in Bihar, so they are very rare, and in fact involve preparing the electoral roll afresh. And in fact, such an intensive revision exercises were carried out in select years between 1952 to 2004, making Bihar Special Intensive Revision Exercise a significant administrative undertaking on the part of the Election Commission of India. Right? So I hope you have understood what exactly is a special intensive revision exercise in the state of Bihar. Now, what are the challenges to the special intensive revision exercise? And we should also understand this dimension as well, right? So there are certain challenges and we should also try and understand the challenges. So if we talk about the challenges, now, as I have already told you that Bihar is going for the State Legislative Assembly polls this November. And the Election Commission of India has announced this special intensive revision exercise in late June. And in fact, the Election Commission of India said that the demographic changes, when I say demographic changes, there might be a persons who died, a persons who migrated, persons, there are duplications, ghost, names in the electoral rolls. So all these things would be considered as part of the demographic changes which have been taking place in the state of Bihar. Now, the demographic changes in last 20 years. So it actually means that the current electoral rolls, they have many repeated entries. So they have a lot of errors. And these errors and repeated entries have created a situation that an intensive revision exercise should be mandatorily carried out to verify each person before enrollment of such person as a voter. Right? So this is the reason that the Election Commission of India has been giving for carrying out such an intense exercise called Special Intensive Revision Exercise. So however, after this announcement, there were multiple petitions which were filed in the Supreme Court challenging this Special Intensive Revision Exercise in Bihar. And in fact, they have challenged the substantive and procedural grounds on which the special intensive exercise has been carried out by the Election Commission of India. And in fact, the substantive grounds that they have raised and the challenged in the Supreme Court of India included the Election Commission of India's powers to conduct such an exercise. So we all knew that when we talk about the Election Commission of India, Article 324 of the Indian Constitution, it talks about the Election Commission of India. But the real question is, really the Election Commission of India have the powers to conduct such a massive exercise? So this is the ground on which the special intensive revision has been challenged in the Supreme Court. However, Supreme Court in one of its judgment has made it clear that the Election Commission of India has the power to conduct such an exercise. And this can also be inferred from the fact that Supreme Court overall allowed the special intensive revision exercise to be conducted, to be carried out. Now let's understand Supreme Court's interim order with respect to special intensive revision and what does the Supreme Court actually said about this. Now, the Election Commission of India has filed one affidavit in the Supreme Court, and one of its affidavit, the Election Commission of India has told the Supreme Court that it was not required by the law to publish a separate list of electors who are being removed from the electoral roll. Now, understand, around 65 lakh voters have been removed from the electoral roll. However, the opposition parties and other legal experts have been asking the Election Commission of India to publish the deleted names from the electoral roll. But Election Commission of India made it clear that it is not required by law to publish a separate list of electors who are being removed from the draft electoral roll. And in fact, so the Election Commission of India also made it clear it will not provide any reasons for the deletion or non-inclusion in the draft electoral roll. And that's where questions have been raised against the functioning of the Election Commission of India and its special intensive revision exercise. However, this was in opposition to a plea which was filed by the Association for Democratic Reforms in Supreme Court, and it has been seeking the release of names and details of around 65 lakh electors who did not make it to the draft which was published on August 1st. However, the Election Commission of India, so in the Supreme Court, it has said that there are certain apprehensions that the political parties might aggregate the data if it publishes such a data, and the participation could be the publication of the names which are being removed from the electoral rolls. And it might be a violation of the fundamental right to privacy, which was recognized by the Supreme Court in Pottaswamy judgment in Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. So in Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, the Supreme Court has recognized fundamental right to privacy. And here the ECI gives the reason that publication of names which are removed from the draft electoral roll may be a violation of right to privacy. And in fact, another reason that the Election Commission of India has given was the political parties might aggregate the data that is published by the Election Commission of India. However, the Supreme Court pushed back on this argument. The Supreme Court has clearly said that no, you have to publish the 65 lakh deleted voters' names along with the reasons for the deletion from the draft electoral roll. And people can easily search whether their name is part of the deleted voter list by entering the epic number, right? And in fact, this essentially establishes or enables individuals and political parties to check if a voter from a constituency has been removed from the rolls or whether this exclusion is justified or not. So if they believe that this exclusion is not justified, so they can follow a certain procedure. So what procedure that they actually follow? Now the Election Commission of India has said that those names which are removed from the draft electoral roll, they can submit Form 6 to the Election Commission of India. Right? So they can actually submit Form 6 to the Election Commission of India, and this is a form for the registration of new electors, and they have to submit it by September 1 in the state of Bihar. So this is the recourse after the removal or deletion of the names from the draft electoral roll. And in fact, the Form 6 that the Election Commission of India has asked the removed voters to submit to the Election Commission of India, so it allows the Aadhaar both as a proof of identity and residence for the enrollment of such voters. And in fact, the electoral registration officer verifies the information that has been submitted through Form 6 and enrolls such a person as a new voter. Now, the Supreme Court in its interim order has directed that the aggrieved person may submit their claims along with a copy of their Aadhaar card as well. Right? So this is how the Supreme Court has asked the Election Commission of India to make it public the 65 lakh deleted voters along with the reasons for their deletion from the draft electoral roll to the Election Commission of India, right? So I hope it is clear for you, and even if you have any doubts regarding this, you can simply type those doubts in the comment section, so we'll try to answer those doubts as well. And next important topic is the summit that is going to take place in Alaska between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. So let's understand what is the significance of the summit and what are the key takeaways for India in this particular context. So this article has been given in Indian Express newspaper, and this could be important for both prelims and mains exam perspective. If I talk about the mains exam syllabus for Gender Studies paper 2 International Relations, this could be very important. So let's understand the context very briefly before going into the main topic. So the context is that United States President Donald Trump is going to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday, August 15, in an attempt to find a way to end Russia-Ukraine war. So the intention of US President Donald Trump having a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin is that he wanted to end this Russia-Ukraine war. So we all knew that in recent times, US President Donald Trump has been talking about a ceasefire, or bringing together two conflicting nations to win a Nobel Peace Prize, right? So therefore, in an attempt to end this Russia-Ukraine war, so he's going to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin. So I hope it is clear for you. Now, at a time, Europe perceives an existential threat from Russia. So it is true that Europe has been facing an existential threat from Russia. Now, one thing that we should understand, Russia is now more aggressive against Ukraine and other European members. So there are some countries which are not earlier part of the NATO, which are in Europe. So they now became part of the NATO as well. So therefore, it has been underlining the the existential threat that the Europe has been facing from Russia. And in fact, the continent's ties with the US are also being tested after Donald Trump being elected as a president of US. However, now when Ukraine's future is at stake, neither the Europeans nor the Ukrainians will be present in this meeting, right? So this is an irony, because this is largely about Europe and Ukraine, but Europe and Ukraine are absent in this meeting, right? So just US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin are going to meet, and they talk about this Russia-Ukraine war, but there's an absence of Europeans and Ukrainians also in this summit. Now, what Trump decides? So let's understand what exactly Trump wanted to do, and then we'll also understand what Putin demands and what Vladimir Zelensky demands, and what is India's stance on this. Now let's understand what exactly Trump wants or Trump decides. Now, in fact, when Donald Trump became the president of US, so within 24 hours he made an announcement that he would end the Russia-Ukraine war within 24 hours. And he also spoke with Russian President Putin. And in fact, US President Donald Trump very often claimed that Russian President Vladimir Putin is a very good friend of him, and they maintain a very good relationship for years, and they talk to each other. So ultimately, Donald Trump decides to end the Russia-Ukraine war, so that the credit goes for him for ending such a war. Now, what Russian President Putin demands in this? Now, in fact, it is being said that US President Donald Trump's meeting with Russian President Putin, it will be considered as a victory for Russia from the moment US President Donald Trump lands in Alaska, right? Because he has been declared an outcast by the West, and he will be on American soil at a time he has charges of war crimes against him. So therefore it is a clear victory. Now in fact, understand that Russian President Vladimir Putin has been charged of war crimes. So despite such accusations, he is going to land on American soil, and therefore it would be considered as a victory for the Russian President Vladimir Putin. And in fact, there is a recognition from the leader of world's most powerful country is a proof that the efforts to isolate him have been failed. So West collectively made efforts to isolate Russia and Russian President Vladimir Putin in the international diplomacy. But you can see that there is a clear failure of such a policy. However, Putin has aimed high, and he asked for not just all Ukrainian territories that Russia currently occupies, and ban on Ukraine's entry into NATO as well. So he don't want Ukraine's entry into NATO. And in fact, Russian President Vladimir Putin also wanted, so whatever territory is now under control of Russia in Ukraine, so those territories should be ceded to the Russia. So he is very clear about this. And he also wanted that the sanctions which are imposed on Russia by West collectively should be eased. And in fact, these sanctions on Russia have affected their technology and their defense industries as well. And Russia is also having a huge budget deficit. And the budget deficit of Russia is also increasing manifold, and its income from oil gas exports is under pressure. For example, whoever have been importing oil and gas from Russia, so countries like West and in Europe and the US, they have imposing tariffs and sanctions on those countries and companies. So therefore, the income from oil and gas exports is under pressure, and the budget deficit is also significantly increasing. And this is what Putin largely wanted, right? So they wanted to ease the sanctions on it, and they wanted to have territorial gains, and they don't want Ukraine to be part of the NATO grouping. Now let's understand the Zelensky's point of view, right? So what Ukraine wanted from this. Now, in fact, Ukraine's immediate objective is a ceasefire. So there should be a ceasefire to stop the attacks on Ukrainian cities and killings of Ukrainian civilians. Right? So this is an immediate objective of Ukraine. However, so Ukraine has also stressed that for any talks to be even remotely substantive or successful, the next stage must be about a durable peace on both sides will honor. Right? So for example, in case of a ceasefire, so that ceasefire must be honored by the both sides. So there should be no violation of such a ceasefire. Only then the durable peace will exist in both Russia and Ukraine. So this is what Ukraine wanted. And another important goal is Ukraine wanted a NATO membership. Ukraine wanted NATO membership, but Russia don't want Ukraine to be part of NATO. Right? So therefore, there are conflicting interests for both Russia and Ukraine. So when they have such a conflicting interests, it would be very difficult to resolve such issues between these two countries. And in fact, Ukraine also wants to continue, it also wants that West should continuously support Ukraine through the military assistance and further strengthen and modernize its armed forces. But Russia don't want that again, because it might threaten Russia's sovereignty and territorial integrity as well. And in fact, Ukraine has also insisted that it will not give up any regions that are currently occupied by the Russian forces. But on the other hand, Russia wanted that whatever territories that Russia currently occupied in Ukraine should be part of the Russia. Right? So there are a conflicting interests, and in fact, understand Crimea is a territory now that currently belongs to Russia. Earlier it belongs to Ukraine, but it was annexed by Russia in the year 2014. And in recent Russia-Ukraine war, Donbass under the control of Russian forces as well. Now let's understand the view from New Delhi. Now, what are the important takeaways for New Delhi from this summit? Now, we all knew that US President Donald Trump has imposed 25% tariffs on India for importing Russian oil. And apart from 25% of tariffs on Indian exports to US, he again imposed additional 25% tariffs on Indian goods, amounts to total 50% of the tariffs on Indian goods to Indian exports to US. So that is going to be a big blow for India's trade with US. That could potentially reduce India's trade with US, and that is going to affect 2% of India's overall GDP as well, if we talk about the numbers. However, for Trump, India is the easiest target. So one reason is India has been having a huge trade surplus with US. But when it comes to China, US has a limited leverage, which buys most of its energy from the Russia, right? And in fact, India and Brazil, they face 50% US tariffs, and in fact it is the highest in the world. Both India and Brazil have been facing 50% of the tariffs. But recently, India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, so he met with Putin in Kremlin last week, and the next day Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and 3 days later he also spoke to Zelensky, of his Ukraine president. However, the outcome that is going to be expected from this Alaska summit is very important for India, because India hopes that if Trump comes out of feeling good with a win in his mind, now it could lead to a rethink of 25% of the penalty on Indian goods. So that will substantially increase India-US trade, and India will continue to maintain the trade surplus. However, in fact, after US President Donald Trump has announced this Alaska summit meeting between both the leaders, the Ministry of External Affairs, it welcomed the understanding reached between US and Russian Federation. So therefore, we have been expecting good news from this summit. So that is going to help India improve its ties with both Russia and US. And besides hoping removal of the penalty for buying Russian oil, so India is also very keen and interested to participate in the rebuilding of Ukraine as the post-conflict future emerges. Right, so this is the view from the New Delhi from this Alaska summit between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. So next important topic is Kerala is going to become India's first digitally literate state. And this article has been given in the Indian Express newspaper, and this might be important for your prelims examination. Now on August 21st, Kerala Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan will declare Kerala as India's first digitally literate state. And it is all because of innovative campaign to familiarize its population with the digital technology, bridge the digital divide, and also erase the digital barriers which are existing. So let's understand some important details about this. And in fact, the first digitally literate state, it is spearheaded by the local self-government. Now we all knew that in Kerala, the local self-government is very strong, right? So it is being spearheaded by the local self-government, the Digi Kerala. And in fact, it is a complete digital literary program. And in fact, it aimed at digital revolution to all sections of a people, regardless of their age, their caste, their social status, their income status, so that they can avail the e-services. They can be better equipped with the e-governance tools. However, this massive program was launched in the year 2023, the Digi Kerala project, to digitally empower all groups of people. And in fact, so it was launched in 2023 after surveying 83 lakh households to identify the digitally illiterate and eventually holding training modules for them. And according to officials, the Sustainable Development Goals, so 2.57 lakh trained volunteers including Manrega supervisors and National Service Scheme, National Cadet Corps and Nehru Yuva Kendra. So all these different stakeholders have involved in conducting such a massive survey which covers 1.50 crore people in 83 lakh families across the state of Kerala. And in fact, such a massive survey also helped shortlist 25 digitally illiterate people and 21 lakh digitally illiterate people, including several elderly who are above 90 years of age. Right? So this is a significant feat that has been achieved by the state of Kerala when it comes to digitally empowering the people. So next important topic is Samudrayan mission that is going to be launched by India. So let's understand what exactly is Samudrayan mission, what is Matsya 6000, right? So Matsya 6000. So it is also very important. Let's understand about this. So, in a first for the country, 2 Indian aquanauts. So astronauts and aquanauts. So aquanauts are those people who go underwater through a submersible. They're being called as aquanauts. So they have taken a dives to a depth of nearly 400 meters and 500 meters in the Atlantic Ocean on board a French submersible Nautile. And in fact, this has been one of the deepest an Indian has ever gone underwater. As part of preparations for Samudrayan, Samudrayan is part of India's deep ocean mission. Now, Samudrayan is India's first manned deep sea mission that aims to send 3 astronauts to 6,000 meters by 2027 in a man-made titanium submersible which is called as Matsya 6000. So let's understand about India's deep ocean mission or Samudrayan. Now, we all knew that through Axiom 4, Indian astronaut Shubhanshu Shukla sent to the International Space Station, and it is part of India's flagship Gaganyaan mission program. So Gaganyaan is India's first manned space flight program. So 3 astronauts would be sent to the low Earth orbit as part of the Gaganyaan mission. So similarly, this Nautile dive, it gives India a deep sea crew end-to-end operational training, which is important for Samudrayan, a deep ocean mission, from pre-dive preparations, vessel piloting to manipulator arm operations, tracking and retrieval. So in all these stages, this Nautile dive will help it. Now, in fact, Samudrayan is also part of country's deep ocean mission. So that will for the first time take a 3-member crew to 6,000 meters below surface in an indigenously developed Matsya 6000. So you can see here, this is how Matsya 6000 actually look like, right? So in fact, this mission also aims to develop technologies to access and also transport tons of valuable minerals which are being called as the polymetallic nodules from the ocean bed in an environmentally safe manner. And it is being equipped with scientific sensors, tools. Matsya 6000 can operate for 12 hours and it can be extended up to 96 hours in emergency situations. And as of now, only 5 countries, US, Russia, France, China, Japan, so they have the capacities and they have already carried out successful crewed deep missions. And India is set to become the 6th country to join this exclusive club of nations which have already conducted such a deep dives into the ocean. So if we talk about the deep ocean mission of India, so it is a deep sea mining mission through underwater vehicles and underwater robotics. And in fact, so it is part of asserting exclusive rights to explore the polymetallic nodules from the seabed over 75,000 square kilometers of areas in international waters. and estimated polymetallic nodules would be 380 million tons in the Indian Ocean region. And in fact, it will also be helpful for the development of ocean climate change advisory services and development of technology for sustainable utilization of marine bioresources for India as well. And if we talk about the polymetallic nodules, so manganese 92.6 million tons or metric tons. It will also help in deep ocean survey and exploration, energy from ocean and offshore based desalination, krill fishery from southern ocean. So all these factors, right? So in this, the deep ocean mission will help. Now Matsya 6000, so India's first manned deep space mission. So deep ocean mission, sending 3 humans to 6 kilometer ocean depth in a self-propelled submersible. So this is Matsya 6000. And it will be helpful in exploring deep sea resources, biodiversity assessment, and endurance of 12 hours under the normal operation and 96 hours in case of emergency. Right? So I hope you have understood about this topic as well, and that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. So please subscribe our YouTube channel.